Hello, my dear fellow Americans. Today's topic is going to be about my sources for all of Giuliani's scandals. Couple quick points. One, again, conservatives and liberals alike both think Giuliani is the biggest crook in history when they find out the details. This is not partisan politics. If you pay taxes, you despise Giuliani. If you don't pay taxes, you despise Giuliani. If you drive a car, you hate him. If you take mass transit, you hate him. If you ride a bicycle, you hate him. If you roller skate, you hate him. If you walk, you hate Giuliani. But only if you find out the facts. Now, a lot of people ask me as I post these videos, where's your sources? Now, most of the stuff I say you can Google, but not all of it, because I know more about Giuliani than all media sources in America combined. I was paid as a Rudy Giuliani researcher for a documentary called Giuliani Time. They hired me in 1996? I was one of the world's foremost Giuliani experts at that point. And so they were making a documentary about Giuliani. They came to one of my trials when Giuliani had me falsely arrested, and I kicked Giuliani's ass. The jury called me an American hero. The jury said that Giuliani should have hired me to clean up government because I'm such a troubleshooter, blah, blah, blah. I had to watch thousands of Giuliani's press conferences on video and log all the stuff he said. Right there. I'm more qualified to speak about Giuliani than almost any human in history. I also had to watch thousands of videos of Giuliani going back to 1972 when his comb-over looked like this. And also I spoke with Rudy Giuliani 22 times on live radio. I logged all of his WABC radio shows for 8 years. I know way too much about this guy. Now remember, if you notice what I just said, I didn't say I hung out with Al Sharpton. I didn't say I spoke to all of Giuliani's enemies. Pardon me, my brain's melted because I drink a lot of tap water here in New York City, which is filled with fluoride and chlorine because Giuliani cleaned up New York. And chlorine is not something you're supposed to drink too much of, but I digress yet again. Sorry. All of my sources for Giuliani's scandals pretty much come from one source: Giuliani's mouth. For instance, it wasn't Giuliani's enemies who told me he married his second cousin. It was Rudy Giuliani. It wasn't Giuliani's enemies who told me that Rudy didn't know it was a second cousin for 10 years. It was Giuliani who told me that. It wasn't Rudy's enemies who told me he hired Bernie Kerik, a mobster, mob aficionado and criminal. It was Giuliani. Example, Giuliani's first police commissioner, William Bratton. He was taking away all of Rudy Giuliani's publicity, and Rudy was furious. There were all kinds of inside sources saying Rudy was going to fire Police Commissioner Bratton or such because Bratton was making Giuliani look bad. Bratton was getting all the credit. He was on the cover of Time magazine for fighting New York City's crime and such. Giuliani was furious. People kept asking, Rudy, are you going to fire Bratton, your star police commissioner? And Rudy said, no, no, no. He's not resigning. He will not be fired. 2 months later, Bratton announces his resignation, and Giuliani says, I accept his resignation. Do you see? It wasn't Rudy's enemies who said Bratton wouldn't be resigning. It was Rudy. And it wasn't Rudy's enemies who said Bratton was resigning. It was Rudy. It was Rudy Giuliani in every single situation who told me he lied. It wasn't Rudy Giuliani's enemies who told me Rudy was a hyper-liberal who supported Mario Cuomo's re-election. It was Rudy Giuliani. And it wasn't Rudy Giuliani's enemies who told me Rudy flip-flopped when he said, these liberals like Mario Cuomo are destroying our society. Rudy, I saw you endorse him, and I saw you years later flip-flop when you started running against Hillary Clinton and you needed to reestablish your conservative credentials. Rudy has flip-flopped on every single topic in his life. It wasn't his enemies who clued me into this stuff. It was Rudy Giuliani. It wasn't Rudy's enemies who said he couldn't end prostitution. It was Rudy. It wasn't Rudy's enemies who said he couldn't do anything about jaywalking in this city. It was Rudy. It wasn't Rudy's enemies who didn't solve any of the crimes. I was the victim of hundreds of crimes during Giuliani. I spoke to Giuliani on radio personally and asked him and begged him to do something about crime. He refused. It wasn't his enemies who refused. I had my 19th bicycle stolen 3 days ago here in front of my house in Manhattan. I don't live in Bed-Stuy. I don't live in Harlem. I live in Lower Manhattan, where condos down the street go for $1 million. My bike was stolen 3 days ago. My 19th bicycle stolen. It wasn't Sharpton who said Rudy lowered crime, and then my bike, and I keep seeing crime everywhere. It was Rudy. Rudy Giuliani is my source for every Giuliani scandal. It wasn't Rudy's enemies who said he protected Purdue Pharmaceuticals and OxyContin. It was Giuliani who said that. It wasn't Rudy's enemies who said the makers of OxyContin were criminals who pled guilty. It was Rudy. It wasn't Rudy's enemies who said Rudy had to hide public records and wouldn't allow the media to look at any of his records on fighting crime or welfare, that maybe he cheated these. It was Rudy. And I can go on and on and on and on with thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, actually literally hundreds of thousands of Giuliani scandals. My source for every one of them, Rudy Giuliani, not Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton is a moron. Hillary Clinton, not my source for any Giuliani scandals. Democratic Party, they're this far from Giuliani's corruption. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. Both political parties suck. Both political parties are corrupt. The media is corrupt. Left-wing media, corrupt. Right-wing media, corrupt. Get it through your heads, America. It is the taxpayers, you and me, the little people, who are getting fucked by the fucking corporations, the corporate media, and the corporate politicians. Stop with this Republican-Democrat nonsense. It is a fake division they created so we would fight each other while they go out the back door with our money. Okay? Remember that. If you doubt anything I say, ask Giuliani's people to debate me. They'll refuse.